Good morning. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. And good morning, everyone. It's not often at 8 o'clock in the morning I get to come out to Crystal City to talk about data. I'm thrilled about it. I was leaving the house this morning, and I said, they said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to a hotel in Crystal City. And she goes, great. What are you talking about? I said, workforce data quality, educational data quality. Blank stare. And she said, okay, see you for dinner. So I said, yeah, I'll explain it all later, but it's good stuff. I thought for a couple of minutes I would sort of take a step back. You're going to hear a lot about workforce data quality yesterday, today, tomorrow, and data in general. But I want to take a step back and sort of give you the context of at least the last 7 months that we've been working on in the bigger picture of the Department of Labor and the administration, and talk about, I think, some of the issues that Secretary Perez at the Department of Labor has energized, and certainly the White House has been particularly interested in. So let me give you sort of a landscape about education and training and workforce policy and sort of the new vision of job training and workforce system and how that fits into the work you're all doing, which is central to it, and which data comes up in every conversation we're in. In the State of the Union, the President talked about skills, he talked about community colleges, he always talks about education, training, and skills development. And I think this is driven by a lot of things, and that is employers all over the country, even today in a sluggish economy, say, I can't find the workers with the right skills that I need. I can't find them with the right education, the right training, the right skills that I need, and that there's a lot of us in the world who are going around trying to figure out what those are and how we engage employers to narrow down the knowledge, skills, abilities, and credentials that people need to be successful in the workplace. And I think all of you probably know the data that most jobs for the next 20 years will require something more and beyond a high school diploma, maybe not a 4-year degree, but certainly above and beyond a high school diploma. So there's a great deal of interest in this, and employers, manufacturing is growing. There's been 47 months of job growth. There's been 8 million jobs created. More needs to be done. But in that context of what's happening is this sort of skills issue. The President after the State of the Union sort of lifted up skills, talked about not only the workforce system, but certainly about education and community colleges in 4 years, and the whole workforce system writ large. And when I say workforce system, I'm talking K-12, 2 years, 4 years in the public workforce system that we administer over the Department of Labor. What the President did after the State of the Union is sort of focused on long-term unemployed. There's a focus on veterans. There's a focus on the skills agenda. And he asked the Vice President to lead, well, before I get to that, so there's been some principles developed in the administration, job-driven training principles, right? You may have heard it before as demand-driven, industry-driven, job-driven, whatever you want to call it. There's a basic set of principles that says basically whatever we're doing in the workforce education and training space needs to be informed what employers want. And so there's a rather significant effort, a cross-agency, interagency effort to assess all of the workforce programs that the administration is doing and to make sure they're aligned with those principles of job training, that your programs, your formula grants, your discretionary grants are aligned with what employers need, or at the state and local level, people working with employers to be informed by those industry sectors about developing focused and effective job training programs that meet the need of employers. There's been a lot of conversations about the workforce system for years. It's just train people and then pray that they got a job. I think our focus is training and placing them in a job to make sure folks get a job. So the President has asked the Vice President to lead this effort in the administration, and so that's ongoing, and after 180 days there'll be some report about the effectiveness of job training programs, how they're job-driven, and trying to get them more job-driven. But what comes up, and then in the months preceding the State of the Union and since then, there's a huge interagency effort with our colleagues over at Education, HHS, HUD, elsewhere, right? The Food Stamp Employment Training Program, Adult Education and Literacy Programs, TANF programs, a wide variety of other federal programs that are connected to employment and training. And I know with Secretary Perez's vision and mission, because I worked with him when we were in the state of Maryland, was imploding stovepipes and having this really good cross-agency work. And I think that's been carried on through the work you're all doing here today with the state longitudinal data systems, workforce data quality, and sort of imploding the stovepipes. But, you know, the effort really is, that comes up in these big conversations, and there's, you know, if you think that the administration is not invested in what you do in workforce, I'm here to tell you that there is a lot of issues that come up in the administration on education, training, and skills, and making sure that data is part of the conversation now. The data sometimes, you know, is talking about getting effective labor market information out in the hands of people, getting effective labor market education to parents and kids' hands. There's talk about, you know, is there common entry systems? So a veteran with a disability who lives in public housing and needs job training is not dealt with by 4 separate agencies and 4 different case management systems, but how do you bring those systems together? And then certainly on the back end, you know, how do those systems share that data together for not only effectively tracking our outcomes and for accountability purposes, but also for the research and effectiveness of that. So there's a lot of conversations. There's talk about expanding the electronic tools so people can have access to more of this information. There's conversations about scorecards. And these are at very high levels. So, I mean, there's a lot of activity and energy and interest in, I think, the work that you're doing. And so I think it's important that you know that. I guess the other thing, you know, I worked in state government. I was in the first round of grantee with my friend Dave Stevens, who's here from Maryland. And so I know how complicated these grants are. I know that I know the several challenges, and I'm going to assume that many of them are challenges, right? So there's sort of the state policy questions that are going on in your state about where workforce data quality and the state longitudinal systems and your partners in ed and higher ed and K through 12 sort of fit together. Where does the workforce system fit? We have done 29, 31 grants now, several rounds of workforce data quality. They're $1 million each. Nice, probably insufficient compared to some of the other larger grants that go out there for data quality in general. So we're trying to catch up, and maybe we can do something about that over the next year or so. But you know, there's policy issues at the state level. There's interest issues. I imagine it's very uneven across this room. Are your governors engaged in this conversation? Are your secretaries of Congress or labor or commissioners, are they engaged in it? At what level? I know in some states education is totally leading the way, and workforce is maybe a necessary required stepchild because you have, you know, wage record data. I hope that's gotten better. I think that's gotten better. But, you know, where does adult education fit into this? Where does, you know, food stamp employment training fit into this? Where do some of the other workforce investments fit into this, and how can they be connected to the larger state longitudinal data systems? I know those are all things you're working on, but I do think it's important. The governance of these systems in states is really important. One of the things I learned at the state level in Maryland was, you know, K-12 ran it, the chancellor ran it, and workforce was at the table, but, you know, that was nice. And I think over time they've improved on that. I really do think that the workforce system can add value and connect with this. So I think that's an important thing. So you've got sort of your governance challenges in states, and I know that's gotten better. And then, you know, there's the whole, I'm not smart enough to talk about the interoperability challenges. I know, you know, 2 or 3 years ago, those were bigger challenges. I'm sure you're making progress in interoperability. And certainly, you know, data and big data, so everybody can get access to it and use it, are huge issues. So I just wanted to sort of give you a little context of, I think, the administration's effort. I think you're going to be hearing, and I would ask you to keep your ear to the ground on the whole workforce and skills and education and skills agenda in DC, and then what goes on in the states. I'll say also a lot of our, not only our formula grants, but our discretionary grants. We've got a huge number of grants coming out of the Department of Labor. We've got around 4 of the TACT grants, the worst acronym in government, but the Trade Adjustment Assistance Community College to Career grants. $450 million coming out this spring. Again, we're asking those sites, and we funded probably 70% of the community colleges in the country up to this point. But how do they connect some of the robust work they're doing in building capacity community colleges to the state longitudinal data systems and the efforts going on in their states? So, you know, we're doing a long-term unemployment grant with $150 million. Again, many more people involved, much more data collected. How do they feed in and get connected to this so we're getting good information. So there's a lot of activity certainly in the Department of Labor side of this equation. There's a lot of activity and interest from the administration. I know your grants and the things you're working on are challenging. If there's one thing I would just ask you to keep working on, and that is sort of the implosion of stovepipes, because I think it's critical that you're able to work to get agreements in place, to share information, to share data, to make it a better product at the end of the day. So with that, I'll pause and pass it on to some of my other partners. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks.